we're waiting for friends to arrive and the game to begin, I gave you some secrets yesterday about keeping your food warm. If you want to bring food with you, get some bricks, warm them in the oven, wrap them in towels. They'll keep your hot food hot in a cooler. One of my favorite things to bring to Tailgate is chili. Let's go back to the stainless steel kitchen. I'll show you some ideas for bringing chili to the big game. So we're going to make chili today, and this is again up to your interpretation. I'll show you the way that I do it. It's not a chili recipe, it's ideas for you to do your own chili and a procedure to follow regardless of the ingredients that you use, but it's going to start like most things do on the saute. Do you ever notice what a fan I am of saute? Do you ever really see me start by going over to the oven? This is driving the car of cooking. This is where we control things most, and it's my favorite place to be in the kitchen. So step one is going to be some kind of sauce pot, stock pot, soup pot, something with high sides. Not a saute pan because we're going to have a good volume of items, but we will cook in a saute procedure. Over to the stove we go. Although it's a soup pot, it's a saute procedure, which starts with making sure the pan is hot. A little bit of water on my hands, evaporates immediately. Pan hot, some kind of fat. A little bit of fat to just barely coat the bottom of the pan to be a liaison for our heat. Pick the pan up, swish it all around, cover the entire bottom of the pan, heat this until just before it begins to smoke. That you can tell when it goes from being perfectly smooth to being striated, starting to see those waves. I see that my oil is starting to convect, and now it's time for my protein product. You can certainly use ground beef. What I've got here is some filet mignon. Remember the beef tenderloin episode where I took that whole beef tenderloin and I had that chain and it was so fatty, and I said most people will throw that away, but there still is meat on there. Here's a perfect application for that, cleaning that beef tenderloin chain. Now we're making filet mignon beef tenderloin chili. I mean, if that's not a step above everything else, chili is going to cook for a long time, so I'm not as concerned about it. But what I do have here are some chopped onions. I'll go ahead and add the chopped onions to our beef and continue cooking that in that respect. My beef that I've cubed up coarsely and my onions sauteing in here. What we're going to do is go ahead and add some brown sugar. I like this a little sweeter as well. So, I don't know, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar will go in there, mixed in. What else has a nice beef flavor to it that I might be able to pump up the beef flavor a little bit? How about some Worcestershire sauce? And again, big containers here in a commercial kitchen. 2 tablespoons, and I call everything 2 tablespoons? Okay, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce will go in there as well. Start to saute that until a lot of that sauce is dry, till it's almost dry. When most of that moisture has evaporated, now comes the fun part. I like to use some whiskey or bourbon just to give it a little bit of a smoky flavor. Hey, guess how much that was? About 2 tablespoons. We'll add that and continue to saute until that's almost dry. And when all my jack is gone, it's time to cool down that pan a little bit, stop some of the cooking. Notice on the side of the pan where I've got some burnt on items. On the bottom of the pan, I've got some fond still there. So some beef broth. Since I'm making a beef chili, we're going to add, I don't know, a cup or so of beef broth. And what have we done now? Now we've begun a moist cooking method where this beef is going to poach in the beef flavored liquid, making it much more tender. Some of the things that we can go ahead and add to that, some tomato paste will give it a nice tart kind of flavor, plus the acid in the tomato paste will help tenderize that beef somewhat. And it's time for some seasonings as well. What do I like in my chili? Well, I don't like to over season it. I don't like to make it too hot. I've got a little thyme, T-H-Y-M-E, not on a clock time. One of the few times, now it's on a clock time, times that you'll see me use black pepper. I prefer white, but in the chili it's okay, it's going to get hidden. And a little bit of salt as well we'll add, and we'll check those seasonings in just a few minutes. When I see all that come together and some of the moisture start to evaporate, now it's time for some beans, canned beans that I've strained. You can make them pinto beans, you can make them black beans, you can make them red beans, you can make any kind of beans you want. I'm going to put pinto beans in here. And lastly, if you like tomatoes, well, it might be time for some canned diced tomatoes, or you can make tomato concasse if you'd like we've shown you in episodes before. And I'll put half a can of diced tomatoes in there. Mix that up, and here's my chili. Looks pretty watery though, doesn't it? My chili's looking a little bit like beef and bean soup right now because of all that liquid in there that we added and all the deglazing and so on. But don't forget, all that liquid has flavor to it. So here's another question asked of me very often. Lid on or lid off? Lid on or lid off? Well, the difference between lid on and lid off is the ability for the moisture to evaporate into the atmosphere, reducing the amount of that liquid and intensifying the flavors. Lid on is steaming. Moisture tries to evaporate, hits the top of the lid, condenses, and falls back down. So, do you want to get rid of some of the moisture in the pan? If so, you need to let it evaporate. Lid off, reduce. That's what we want right now. When it gets to the consistency of chili that I want, a little bit thicker, then I'm going to put the lid on, lower the heat, and let that all steam in its own juices. Difference between lid on and lid off. Now when my chili gets to about this consistency, still there's some liquid in there to mop up with some bread or cornbread or something if you'd like, but not quite as soupy as it was before. Now's the time I'm going to go ahead and put a lid on that pan and let that continue to steam in its own liquid. And then after a few more minutes, this can be just left for an hour or 2 or 3, or transferred to your crock pot if you wanted to cook it all day long. You can't really screw this up, It's a moist cooking process and a recipe that you can invent for sure. Use ground beef, use ground turkey. A vegetarian chili is going to be exactly the same procedure, but you might start with your onions and beans after that and build one flavor on top of the other with carrots. I've got some shredded Monterey Jack and cheddar cheese here, and here is my filet mignon beef tenderloin chili. Doesn't get much better than that. There are so many great ideas for tailgate foods, things to bring to the game or things just to serve on the couch. But once again, it's up to your inspiration, your imagination, and basic cooking methods that'll make it come out great. But here's some more tips. Number 1, be careful of your food safety. If you're going to tailgate and cook there, please keep that raw chicken separate from everything else. Please have some hand sanitizer or gloves available so that you don't make everybody sick. And if you're bringing food with you, use my trick with the bricks, keeping them warm, because as you keep that food warm, it inhibits bacterial growth. You'll keep it safe as well. Have a great time at the big game, whether you choose to bring the food with you or cook it there. Make sure you're safe and everybody has a great time. Go Pack. Go favorite team. Go whoever the hell you want to go. Go, just go. All of you, just go. Wherever you're going, go. I don't care.